Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Optim webinar. My name is Stephen Phillips. I'm CTO of Theia Interactive, and I will be giving you this demonstration. So today's webinar is all about the Optim 1.4 preview. So Optim has been out for quite a while, and we have an upcoming release that we don't have a specific date for yet, but we really wanted to show you what's up and get you excited about it. So first thing is the agenda. First, we are going to recap Optim. Not everyone is intimately familiar with it. I want to give the full story. And then we will talk about some specific toolkit improvements, moving on to the collaborative improvements for desktop user interfaces, and in general, new tools and features that you can enjoy in the near future. And then there will be plenty of time for Q&A, so I definitely encourage you to ask as many questions as you want. You can put them in the Q&A box that's right at the bottom of your Zoom screen right now, or you can save them for the end. We do love answering questions, and if you don't have enough, then I'll try to think of some other ones that are really commonly come up. First, what is Optim? Optim is a growing suite of tools to accelerate the real-time rendering pipeline for Unreal Engine. It's for Unreal pros like yourself and tries to cover as much of that workflow as it possibly can. So there's three main pieces to it. First, we have an importer for trying to automate some of the data prep process for your large CAD models and large datasmith models. And then we have the in-editor toolkit, which is for really quick and handy utilities while you're already in the editor for setting things like levels of detail, light map resolutions, selecting different objects really quickly, meant to be a really handy day-to-day thing. And then a huge focus for us in this near future is our third portion, which is the collaborative multi-user experiences. So we offer a template that lets you get up and running with a multiplayer game right inside your scene really easily. And that's where a ton of this expansion is coming from our team. Just a brief history of Optim. We actually launched late last year, November of 2019, with only the importer. And then in February, we grew that to become the in-editor toolkit. And in late May, early June, we had the first release of the multi-user collaboration template. And now we're getting into that second generation of more tools, more features, more improvements, and even some upcoming more industry-specific templates for the multi-user design review. And that's what we're really excited about and what most of this will be. So first thing you will see when you get this new version of Optim is going to be a UI refresh. We always like to keep things up to date and modern and as efficient as we can. So this new UI is a little bit easier on the eyes with a dark theme and more compact. We also offer a lot more general information like descriptions of what you're using and tooltips to let you know exactly how you should be using some of these tools. There's also a lot of customization available in the settings panel for color schemes, accent colors, the high contrast themes. And we also have the new features for minimizing. So with your optional setting, you can actually have Optim automatically launch with new projects, and it will automatically close if you are not looking at the project. So if you click over to another monitor, another window, Optim will not get in the way of all your secondary content. It'll hide itself and immediately pop back up when you need it. And then we've added a few extra selection sets to our selection tools. Our selection filters, which I'll actually show you hands-on in just a moment, is our way to quickly grab a large number of objects from your scene based on some logic. And we have two new types, select by resolution and select by actor type, which I will jump over to right now. This is the ArcViz interior scene provided by Epic Games. It just served as a really easy, quick example for us. So this is Optim, the toolkit, and it is launched via the Optim plugin here in the toolbar. And the selection sets are one of the first menu options here on the left. And this is where you can select objects based on material name or based on their actual static mesh name. And the two new ones that I'll show off first are class type which provides a drop-down for a variety of different classes. Now, these are really big, broad ones. For example, you can select any object that is a static mesh actor, and just by hitting enter or select, you'll get everything in your scene that is not a reflection capture, not a light, not a blueprint, for example. That's a really big overarching one, but maybe it's handy for deleting or changing light map resolutions on those sorts of objects. You could also select everything that is a rectangular light, for example, and then it's just grab those different fill lights that are in the windows. So again, a really simple, rapid way to quickly get around and get moving through your scene. The other one is light map resolution, which lets you set a minimum and maximum for how to find your objects in your scene. And you get a number of options here for either selecting these parameters from the original static mesh asset and its settings, or the overridden settings from something that's already in your scene. By default, it's both. So this particular scene has a lot of low resolution assets for the static lighting. So I can find some of those by choosing anything below 32 and above 16 resolution. And when I hit enter, it selects quite a few numbers of objects in my scene. And that lets me, quickly bring up the quality of those sorts of assets. And you can see if I just go down to specifically select things with a 16 by 16 light map, it's a smaller number of objects. But it's super fast to be able to navigate your scene and use logic to mix and match some of these. As an example of one that's been in there for a long time, the name filter is a quick way to grab anything that's called a chair. So there's several of those, and you can imagine how that can be useful. We also have material name, fabric, cement. We have bounds, which is the actual size of different objects. We have level of detail. You can select things based on whether they do or don't have levels of detail, and many more options here. And as a quick recap, although it's not new, we do have a lot of amazing optimization features where you could then go and adjust these objects for their level of detail settings, either really smart densities or very literal values, as well as the clustered merge, which can be used to take all these chairs and turn them into one chair or two. All right, going back to our slideshow. The next really significant part of the toolkit update is our new streamlined template installation process. So Optim is kind of famous for making it really easy to create a multi-user session. One of our previous webinars was titled Setting Up Multi-User Design Review Session in 10 Minutes or Less. And it is really that straightforward, but we're making it even simpler to get into. So if I take that same ArcViz project, it's got no code, no blueprints, no interactivity in it, but I can get it up and running in literally while we're here in a couple minutes with the multiplayer programming. The bottom menu of our Optim toolkit is a template section, which should be highlighted if you have an active trial or if you are a pro member. It now describes to you exactly what the template is and what you can do with it. And then you just click next. And then it tells you what we're going to do when we set up these project settings. And then shows you that you're going to be able to set the level and then eventually play. So all you have to do is click download and install. Now, this is where it could take 5 seconds, it could take 10 minutes, depends on your internet connection because it does try to fetch the latest and greatest from our servers. I already had one installed in another project, so it immediately found it, tells me what it's doing to the project, and I just have to restart. So this is where it takes a couple minutes to restart because Unreal Engine is going to have to recompile all the shaders for that new content. It's going to have to load up the existing assets and textures and things from the project itself. Some Unreal projects just tend to take a long time anyways. But what we're doing in the background, what we have done already, giving you a brand new folder of Optim content with all of our template. So you get all the blueprints, all the meshes and materials for the multi-user avatars, the various tools that we provide you that I'll be able to go into later, and all the config settings to enable you to have VoIP and multi-user connectivity right there in your session. So all of that is set up and ready to go without digging through project settings without reading through documentation or anything else. And now that the project is up and open, seems basically the same, but if you notice, there's a new Optim folder in the content browser where all this template content exists. And if you wanted to, you can go in and modify that code. And this will look a little bit different on the next release as well. We're making efforts to simplify that so you can extend it as much as you want with as little effort as we can get away with. Now, that's not the end of it necessarily. You may want to set a primary level that when you publish this game and package it, it's going to open into this scene exactly or a different scene. So the next time you open the Optim toolkit, which could be automatically opened if you have that setting enabled, it's going to ask us for that default level, which it has already set for us. But this provides a really easy dropdown for choosing either this level, which is called ArcViz RT, or the conference room, for example, which is the other room that we actually provide for you and inject it into the project. So it's as simple as that. And now I could go File, Package for Windows, and then I've got an exe that I can send to somebody and it's good to go. If you want to test it out right here in the editor and, of course, verify it before you go through the whole packaging process, what you have to do is navigate to a map that we have in our folder called main menu. You can just search for it in the content browser. So this main menu map is going to appear more or less completely empty, but this is required to launch into our game because we have a menu first that takes your user info and brings you in. So once you're in the main menu map, you can just play the game. And as you can see, this is the Optim interface for the session. My name is not Optim. The session that you would be able to have with somebody else. So I'll just choose a solo session, choose desktop mode, and then that'll bring me in the conference room that I had from the default installation. So it hasn't compiled all the shaders yet. This is the view room that you may have seen if you've seen any of other webinars or have tried out elsewhere. One of our huge focuses for the collaboration template moving forward is desktop interfaces and making it easy for people to use. Because not everyone has a VR headset, whether it's the fact that they didn't grab it from the office or they don't want to wear it at their desk. Whatever the reason is, we know that people are going to be using a lot of desktop interfaces to go around your collaborative review scenes. So I'll jump into an actual live running application of this. But what you will notice from now on is a brand new desktop interface that is not just a view-only mode that flies around, but actually has menus of its own. So again, this is that conference room. This is a whole different project that we compiled. And on the left-hand side, we have the new menu. So the first one is just the select tool, which would highlight objects that you click. It'll highlight it with your accent color so that other people know if you're selecting it. And it works just like if a VR user were to use a laser pointer and select objects that way. The second item down is the draw tool, which is really fun. It's like a super simple Photoshop brush where you can draw on whiteboards. And this scene has whiteboards already preset onto the walls. It also works on whiteboards that VR users have that they bring around with those tablets. So you get to set a radius, you get to set one of a number of colors, and then you can just click with your mouse, or if you're on VR, grab the pen and draw like this. And you get to change the size, change the color, and you can use it just for fun or actually do real sketches or floor plan drawings or collaborate, have your Scrum meetings right within Optim or something to that effect. Super effective, and it's really fun to get multiple people into this room all drawing on that same space. And the next tool in the desktop UI is our render tool called the screenshot. You can see that it kind of zoomed me in because we have preferences that were saved. You get to change the field of view in this camera mode to zoom in or out. And then we have exposure. And you can choose a resolution of 1080 or 1440 or 4K HD, which allows you to actually render these images straight to your computer and use them later. So if I take this screenshot, I hear a bit of noise feedback, or if I turn around and do another one, do it again, there's really no bad hitches or anything. But if I navigate to my project folder, which is buried under Zoom, in the project folder, then under saved, screenshots, Windows no editor, those screenshots are actually here and waiting and super high resolution for me to use at a later time for whatever I need, whether it's marketing, review, whatever, you can just email them around. Moving on, we do have some new settings for typical conference settings, such as muting all the audio coming out from your application, or muting your microphone so that people aren't picking you up. It's basically considered an essential if you guys are used to being on these sorts of Zoom calls. And not just that, but we have an extremely rich settings menu now. So in our settings menu, you can set a new username if you need to change it mid-session. You can change your accent color, which changes the menu, but also changes how your avatar and how your selections look. You can change the device type, which really is just your icon that floats above your head. And then there's a lot of other settings for things like the graphics. We show you your frame rate live, so you know if the scene is challenging or not. Even give you options to set a screen percentage to either increase or decrease quality. And if you're willing, there's an experimental dynamic screen percentage setting, which will automatically boost that up and down if you or some of your users end up having less than ideal frame rates, less than ideal hardware. And if you're familiar with Unreal Engine's various scalability settings, we now have low, medium, high quality settings for things like anti-aliasing and dynamic shadows and textures. And this is a nice way to kind of fine tune it if you've got performance problems. Maybe you're just running on a laptop and your colleague prepared it on a high-end desktop with super heavy-duty model. Audio settings lets you debug your mic. That one's pretty simple. The immersive mode can actually hide other people so that when you bring out your render tool, you're not seeing them in your final renders. And the desktop settings are for things like field of view and movement speed. A lot of people who aren't used to Unreal Engine or aren't used to video games in general can find themselves kind of spinning around and moving a little too quickly in here. So this lets you slow it way down and navigate really smoothly. And like a networking setting is just a way to debug your ping if you're in a multi-user session and see your total network traffic. Some more, it's a bit more advanced, but there's something in there for everyone. And then one of the coolest new features, getting out of UI, getting more into features, is our new level switching. So let's say you start in an interior scene, but you really need to show the exterior, vice versa. You can actually set up multiple levels to use inside one application. And you have to set this up in the editor, your own thumbnail, your own level that you've created. But you can just select a new level and every single person in the user will teleport with you into a new environment. So this one is a new interior of a home that was packaged into this application. We're also adding more support for some interactive widgets and things for your scene. So like this one, we had pre-programmed a nighttime scene to load in and stream in those light maps there. And if you go with me back to my presentation, we have a variety of new interactive methods for things like exploding models. So exploding models is really great for manufacturing or engineering applications. Lets you take basically any number of objects with any size, and they will automatically find the ideal direction and distance to move away from one another using our algorithm. And you can do it from within the editor for just previewing purposes or reviewing, or you can bake it right into the application so that users can explode their own objects. It can explode in all directions, or it can explode just on one axis. Like this bike is not exploding any objects into the ground, for example. And you get a min and a max distance, and it just handles it itself. Another really awesome tool is our 3D markup. So the whiteboard pens work great on whiteboards, but not everything is a whiteboard. So with the same pen, you can now draw 3D splines in 3D space, whether it's on top of a model or in midair. So this user is drawing an extension of the house, kind of simulating some structure in order to communicate that idea, and that could be actually done for real later on. But you could also use it for writing words or adding a check mark, tracing along a surface and giving an idea of how a shape should be modified. The examples go on and on. It's a really handy tool. You can also scribble on people's backs. We're also introducing grabbable objects. So just like we have in our tools a grabbable camera, a grabbable pen, we want you to be able to make everything grabbable as well for your content. So we have a new Blueprint class that we will have better documentation on, of course, when it's released, but you can create that interactive class and then add your mesh to it, and it can be picked up and moved around at will. The only two options right now are enabling physics or not enabling physics. So it'll either float exactly where you left it, or it'll drop with gravity or be thrown. We do not currently have constraints. So if you made a drawer or a door be movable, you wouldn't exactly be able to move it out just exactly 6 inches or make the door move on its hinge quite yet. So it's a future feature request, and you can definitely up its priority by messaging us about that and describing how you would want it to work out. But it serves as a good something in the meantime to be able to interact with dynamic objects and move things around and design in real time, really. Another really cool one is sticky notes. So sticky notes are placeable and snappable to surfaces, and you can change their color, and you can actually type legit notes in it with a virtual keyboard. In a future version of Optim, we would like to be able to save these out and make these persistent and export a CSV of all the different sticky notes and the notes they contained. Currently, they're just there for your one session. You can take screenshots of them with that render capture, or just otherwise use them for ideation or doing a Scrum meeting on a whiteboard, for example. But really handy utility you can use for anything you really want to. And another example of those interactive widgets is a new video player. So setting up a movie to play in Unreal is not terribly hard. It's just a bit of a headache. However, if you want it to be interactive via touch and click and replicate to all those other players, you're going to have to start programming a lot more. So we made it really easy. There's just a new media asset where you can add an image or add a video in this case. And we give you the play button. You can scrub on the timeline. You can reset the start time, even adjust the volume. And when you play and pause it, it's going to replicate across to everyone else who's in the session. So you all see the same thing at the same time. And we're trying to add more and more things like that, which are super common use cases for typical scenes you'd want to set up or typical examples. For example, we've got a web browser project in the works where you could actually view a live web page right there, just like this media asset as well. So any other feature requests you have for things like that, please shoot them over. That's just a quick sneak peek at some of the features we're bringing into Optim 1.4. We're hoping to have that out within the next month or two, but I can't give you a specific date right now. And I think there are many, many more features I didn't really touch on. Lots of derivatives of those media assets and derivatives of some of those tools. Just a reminder, we do have several webinars available already on demand via our YouTube channels and our Vimeo channel. So just search for Theia Interactive or search for Optim Webinar. And there's a lot more examples of specifically toolkit functionality and specifically collaboration functionality that's already there. And in the meantime, you can go and get your own 14-day free trial of Optim. It does not include some of these brand new things like the sticky notes and the 3D markup, but you'll get the gist of it. You'll get to practice with it. A ton of that toolkit functionality is already there, and we would be happy to extend your trial if you do come back when we have Optim 1.4. So we just want to make sure it works for you. We'd love for you to get in there and let us know. And for now, thanks so much for listening. Send in your questions to the Q&A because I would love to answer them. I see a question about collisions. In the toolkit, being able to either go to or select by or set collision channels. I believe that is not in there quite yet. We have that in the Optim importer. If you're bringing in a Datasmith file, you can assign the collision right there based on any number of parameters you want. But it does look like we don't have collision channels being set quite yet right here, but it's a wonderful idea. And I do want to add that. And some clarification on the grabbing. Right now at runtime, it will not automatically snap back to its original location. That is, if you were to move a mesh, it would stay where it is until you reload that whole level. If you're in the editor, of course, if you play it that way, it'll reset. And for the explodable objects, those will always reset. Once you explode your supercar engine, it doesn't just stay exploded. And another question about when the new version actually comes out. Again, no solid date yet, but I'm hoping that it will be out in the next 4 to 8 weeks. And one more reminder that comes up quite a bit. If you are dying to have some of these features or dying to have some different features in your own version of Optim or in your own projects, even if you don't want the Optim plugin necessarily, we do offer our services as an immersive studio. So we can build you any sort of custom tools, custom editor utilities, custom solutions in general, and would love to talk to you about that. Okay, well, I think that looks good. I think we've answered most of the questions that you guys have, and you can always shoot us an email or drop by the site. Optim@theia.io is a general purpose email address, or you can reach me at steven@theia.io. Really appreciate you stopping by, and this webinar will be published in the next week or so, and please stay tuned for all the rest. Thanks a lot, guys.